in your program. We are actually going to make some media today, or at least get started making media. So I hope you're also here ready to get hands-on with some tools that we can use. So my name is Rachel Roberson, and I am KQED's program manager who works primarily with educators, mostly with middle and high school educators, to bring KQED resources to their classrooms and programs. For those of you who are not in the Bay, so we have some folks in Ukiah and San Leandro in the East Bay. KQED is a public media station here in the Bay Area. And like many public media stations, we have, PBS shows on and we have NPR on the radio, but we also have an education department that's really dedicated to creating resources for youth and educators. And so in addition to the news and arts and science, we have education. And we do that in a bunch of different ways. If you have the slides, and Lupita's dropped those in the chat, I will also drop them in the chat and very much encourage you to access them. All of these are buttons you can push later and find out about our resources. But we have free online courses for educators around media creation and media literacy topics. We have a site for middle and high school youth where they can learn to make media and share their voice with a wider audience. That's called KQED Learn. We'll talk a little bit about that because there's some secondary folks here and we want to make sure that we're serving you. We have a great YouTube series that would really be good for like maybe 4 to 12 called Above the Noise, where Miles Bess, our host, breaks down some important topics that are in the news, looks at multiple perspectives and basically guides students to kind of make their own, build their own opinions using reliable evidence. And then there's PBS Learning Media, which is, if you haven't found it yet, is a vast library of free online public media education resources for grades TK actually, all the way through 12. So these are great resources for y'all. And if you have the slides, which I'm going to pop them in the chat again, I definitely just click into them and then you can investigate these on your own time. So that's who I am and what we're doing here. Today, we're going to really talk about audio storytelling and the power it has to connect youth to each other and give them a chance to share their voice with the wider world. So however that might work in your program setting, I'm hoping you'll find some connections about how that could work. We're actually going to create our own quick podcast. So if you have not yet created a podcast, you're about to, so get ready. And if you are experienced as a podcaster, we hope you bring all your skills to inspire us all. And then we're going to have some time kind of throughout the workshop to kind of discuss, reflect about ways that this could work, kind of sprinkled throughout. So right now, folks have been in the chat, which I really appreciate activity in the chat. We're a small enough group that if you want to uncover your mic and share out loud, there'll be opportunities for you to do that. But definitely just do whatever you feel comfortable doing. If you'd prefer to type, go ahead and do that. If you prefer to talk out loud, that's also fine. So just do what makes sense for you, but definitely be here, participate, and let's get the discussion going. I don't often work with after-school providers and leaders like you, so I'm interested also in learning from you about how some of these things would or maybe might not fit into your situation. So we're going to get started with a check-in question. So our North Star in KQED's education department, everything that we do with educators, with youth, it all rolls up into elevating diverse youth voices. And diverse is doing a lot of work in that sense, but we really mean diversity in all its many ways. So economic diversity, racial and ethnic diversity, geographic diversity, linguistic diversity, like we really do mean diverse youth voices. And as a public media station, our mission is to help get youth voices out in the community where we can appreciate them and hear what they have to say, because they have to say a lot of important stuff. So I'd love for folks to type in the chat, or you can unmute. What does elevating youth voice mean to you in your program, your school, community? You can take any of those pieces and put them all together. But let's start with that question. What does elevating youth voice mean in kind of whatever context you want to address that? And folks can be typing. You can also you don't have to raise your hand or anything. You can just uncover and jump in. Either way. All right, Noah says, giving the youth a platform to share and exchange ideas, right? So elevating youth voice means they have to have some place to put their ideas and also connect with each other. Awesome. Thank you for that. Other comments about what this means to you in your program. Yvette says, providing a safe space for students to share ideas, very key. Diego writes, have students share what they love, right, bringing in their passions. Emily writes, youth voice means being a part of the development and implementation of the program, absolutely. So youth voice means helping youth share their voice with the wider world, but also share their voice with, the experiences that they're having every day. Deborah writes, providing opportunities to explore and express their wonderings and interests, right? So in the after school space, there's so much opportunity to have kids bring their whole entire selves to the space, share their interests, their curiosities, their inquiry, help have a voice in what they're doing in the program itself, right? There's so many different ways that this connects with what we do. Other thoughts? And if you're the kind of person who's like right now, like just typing in the chat, just keep typing, it's cool. We'll sort of have it going, this discussion. So thinking about the ways that youth right now have a voice maybe in your program or in the activities that you do or the opportunities that they have, think about ways that they can then share that either more broadly or very locally. So there's lots of things that youth can do with audio storytelling in a local setting as well. And we'll hear some examples of that in a second. So let's talk about sort of why audio and why this is something that we might want to think about. So we're going to listen to, these are two examples of young people who created audio pieces, one around an issue that really mattered to them, and one about an issue that was very local to their school community. We're going to listen to the local issue, but I also encourage folks to in your own time, listen to the sort of larger issue-based commentary as well. But this is a student, Jade, who is talking about an issue that's happening in her school and some ways that she feels that she can address that or that issue should be addressed. So let's listen to Jade. And as we're listening to Jade, be thinking, what is the strength of this piece? What is the strength of this piece as an audio piece, as a podcast, as opposed to something else like a poster or, a video? What is the power of this as an audio piece?
Hi there, I'm here to help.
Gum, food scraps, dirty wrappers. These are the things that constantly litter the schoolyard. It's impossible to walk around at lunch without something sticking to your shoes or backpack. A trash yard creates unpleasant experiences and uncomfortable learning conditions. My friends and I have a routine of eating and then walking around the yard. We talk, laugh, and make the most of our lunch break. But on multiple occasions, we've had to take detours to the bathroom to scrape chewed gum off of a shoe, scrub a food stain off a backpack, or wash hands after finding something mysterious on them. Also, seagulls swarm the blacktop and circle overhead. I've seen 5 or 6 seagulls dive down at a discarded slice of pizza at once, creating confusion amongst the surrounding students. And these are not unique experiences. The entire student body faces these unpleasantries. The Minnesota Pollution Control Agency states in one study, the schools had an average per capita total waste generation of just over half a pound per day. That's half a pound per student every day. The amount of trash dropped inside and outside of schools is a problem facing districts around the country. We need schools to support students in making a change in their habits. Lack of trash, compost, and recycling bins put out, to the administrators not enforcing enough consequences for littering. These are all things that can be fixed, and we need help and leadership from our schools to make it happen. 8th graders can plan trash pickups for community service hours, and we can form clubs that address and solve the school's environmental issues. An unfortunate incident at lunch lasts the rest of the day, and we need to avoid them in order for all students to feel the most comfortable. Students should be able to come to school and feel safe, especially during their midday break. Creating better systems for students to dispose of trash, setting up school-wide cleanups, and implementing consequences for not picking up after yourself are just a few ideas for providing a clean learning environment. Students need to be able to walk freely without fear of ruining our things so we can perform at our best.
All right, so that was some Powerful words from Jade about an issue that was affecting her very local setting. And as I asked you before, we listened. As you were hearing Jade's piece, what were the strengths of her piece as an audio piece? And you can think of that in any way. You can think about the piece itself. You could think about the audience she's addressing and how a podcast might help connect with that audience. You can think of it in any way. So just like last time, go ahead and drop that in the chat, or you can uncover your mic and just speak it out loud. Another way to think about it is, think about ways that maybe this kind of media could work with an issue that, is coming up in your site. Yvette says she provided specific evidence of the issue, right? So this is she's not just complaining, right? She's actually saying something constructive about an issue that's bothering her. Deborah writes, there was a focus in her voice and what she had to say, no visuals to distract her senses, right? So video is powerful, right? But audio really makes you focus on a voice and what she's actually saying about the problem. And you could hear a little bit too, I think, the frustration in her voice. And so that came across, but in a way that was very accessible and appropriate. Other thoughts about the strength of this piece as a piece of audio? What about in the sense of, what she could then, once she created this piece, what she could then do with the piece? Teresa writes, the voice is more personal, closer, meaning makes the message more important, right? So we could connect with her voice and hear her frustration and empathize. Emily writes, the focus was on her community. She gave examples, research, and solutions, right? So she's not just complaining. She's saying, okay, I did some research, these are some solutions, and I'm proposing as a student in this school, ways that we can make it better. Noah writes, it resonates more as an audio format versus visual, as the students can envision themselves in the situation, right? So rather than providing visuals, right, it gives us an opportunity to imagine ourselves in her shoes. Denise writes, she's able to express herself without having to worry about proper writing. Exactly, this is an oral, right? So her script could look any way it wanted. It doesn't matter what she misspelled or what she did, she's speaking her truth and able to communicate that articulately. Emily writes, this could be shared in every classroom, an easy lift for teachers. Absolutely. So it's something that can be shared with classroom teachers, with the principal, with district folks, right? It's a podcast or any kind of media, but a podcast becomes a very portable product, right? Then that you can share with a wide variety of people without Jade having to stand up in front of people, right? And present. Her voice still speaks for her without that kind of pressure, right? Parents, right? Definitely. So there's lots of different ways, right, that we can get the word out. And again, letting students create something, doesn't matter how, they write it, they're saying it, and then it can be delivered and their voice can be heard, again, without them having to perform or stand up in front of a large crowd of people and say essentially the same thing. So excellent job kind of thinking through. And I see folks already firing off in their brains about how this could work in their setting. So let's talk about just generally kind of making the case for audio. I feel like everyone's sort of made the case in their own mind, but your comments really brought up and connected with a lot of these things. So audio storytelling really encourages that connection and empathy, and the kind of civic engagement around kind of getting involved in your community. Rachel Martin, one of our hosts at NPR, talks about, I firmly believe with every ounce of my soul that the way forward for our country, our common humanity, is to try to understand the experience of others. So audio storytelling really opens that space. It also really centers the learner. And I love that, folks are already talking about how we can involve our youth in and their voices in the programming that we provide, right? So, if we're about centering learner-centered best practices and centering our students and, kind of what they are interested in, this kind of project aligns with that as well. And then this is more of a classroom slide, but it's true that you can really get them writing and kind of jumping into all sorts of traditional literacy reinforcements by sort of saying, oh, this is a script for a podcast, or this is a script for a video. This isn't to fool them. And as someone pointed out, it isn't to like grade them on all sorts of different written conventions, but it is a way to kind of reinforce that interest and connect something that they might be doing, during the school day to something that they can write and read and share and after school. So when you think of your site and your program and your situation, which of these three slides do you most connect with? And you can just put the number in the chat, or you can put more than one number if you want, right? Are you thinking, one, I'm really connecting with the fact that audio projects are encouraging empathy and creative expression, engagement? Are you thinking about those learner-centered best practices? Are you thinking about the connections with the school day and strengthening traditional literacy and media literacy? So right now in the chat, just drop the number that kind of aligns with how you're thinking about audio storytelling in your situation. Nice. Yeah, not surprising to see lots of ones with this group. when I do this with classroom educators, there are a lot of threes, but loving the connection with the number ones. I feel like that is a really good fit with after school. And also, that number two, centering our learners and really focusing on what their interests, passions, issues that they're thinking about are. So nice work with that. So carry that in to kind of the next piece of the puzzle, which is kind of making space for audio. And I feel like a lot of folks we're not going to spend too much time on this because you might be already really thinking about ways that this could align. But anytime that students are asked to, take action, right, or share a personal story, or get creative, or audio can also be used for beats and songs and all sorts of fun stuff around that. Maybe teaching someone how to do something that they really love, right? It can be kind of an explainer situation, or any kind of journalism or any kind of like reporting that kids might be doing. So there's lots of things to consider when you think about projects or activities students are doing that already involve creativity, music, or writing, right? Because that can, as we talked about already, easily be translated into an audio piece. And then you can think, depending on, the interest, or maybe if you have guests or volunteers that come into your program, thinking about ways that audio is used authentically in the real world, right? By writers and scientists and artists and historians and anyone else you might have, coming in. So, things about, when you go to your museum, you always have like that, audio exhibit guide that you could like put on your ears that tell you all about the different pieces, right? Well, if you are making art and after school, and maybe you want to make an art audio exhibit guide that people can come and listen to using audio production, right? Or maybe, there are historic sites, or maybe your school itself is an historic site, right? That you kind of make a guide for. Or there's also oral and family histories projects that can be very powerful to connect with families. So there's like lots of different ways to think about ways to use audio. So I am just, just to sort of kind of put them in various buckets. These are kind of academic buckets. So there's lots of other buckets that you might want to put them in, but a lot of audio pieces fall kind of into that commentary piece. So like kind of making a case, like we saw Jade doing, making a case for something, or advocating for something, or sharing their viewpoints about something. And then there's the personal side, which would be like maybe a personal story, or maybe an oral history or a family connection. And then there's the informational side, which would be more like doing an audio exhibit guide for an art exhibit, or telling about, the history, or researching something that they want to share with the wider world. So all of those things, that audio kind of can fall into these buckets, or they can fall kind of in between them. It's not exactly a rigid genre. So speaking of that, I'd love to hear just really quickly, just drop in the chat things that are popping off in your mind about ways that you could bring audio and integrate it into your program in a way that makes sense in your setting, and everyone has a different setting. So I'd love to like be inspired by you, and also maybe see if you can inspire other folks here. So if you're thinking of an idea or something that like really is resonating with you, that connects to your program or that would interest your students, drop it in the chat now. So folks who might still be thinking would be inspired, and maybe you could also be inspired by someone else's idea. My grandmother had dementia, but was able to remember her childhood stories. So we captured them before she passed away. I think that could translate to student stories. Thank you so much for sharing that, Julie. Absolutely. Oral histories and family interviews are a great opportunity with audio. What else comes to mind? Bessie writes, podcast for parents, a day in the life of your child. That's such a great idea. What else is coming to mind that's really aligned with after school? Denise writes, our kids have been trying to change the snack selections. Okay. There are letters, but making audio letters, they could literally have their voices heard. Absolutely, Denise. Absolutely. And they could share those audio letters widely because they'll be online, digital files. Alexis writes, community awareness research project. Absolutely. Absolutely. So much to think about. These are great ideas. All right, keep those ideas coming because I feel like already there's some conversation, and feel free to reply, because now in Zoom you can reply to people's comments. Feel free to DM people and back chat, get that going, just whatever works for you. This is about kind of thinking what works in your program, in your setting. So do that however it makes sense to you. So KQED has three, because we're a public media station, right? And our North Star is to elevate diverse youth voices. So we really have thought long and hard about how to help students make their voices heard more broadly and give them a place to do that. So I'm going to talk really briefly about three of our audio youth media challenges. These are open to middle and high school students. So upper elementary can practice, they can do this, but at the same time, they can't publish until they get a little older, which, is all good for privacy. But I just want to share these with you because they're ways that students can create something, share it with their community, but also share it with a wider audience of peers. So we have our Call for Change Youth Media Challenge, which asks students to pick any issue that matters to them. So Jade's issue about the trash yard, she submitted under this challenge. So that was a very local issue to her. But you can also do, any issue that youth are thinking about, and we know they're thinking about a lot of issues. They would write a commentary piece. So they would write a piece that shares their own personal experience, as Jade did, but also brings in some research, and comes up with sort of some calls to action or some call for change that they want to see. And then they would create an audio piece and publish it on our showcase. I'm going to show you the showcase in a second. We also have a more sort of personal narrative piece where they can talk about maybe a time that they learned something, or an experience in their life that changed them, or a lesson they learned that they want to share with others. And that can be kind of any experience. I saw someone in the chat talking about the transition to middle school. This would be a really good one for this youth media challenge. They write kind of a perspective, kind of sharing their life. It's a voice only audio piece, so it's a lot easier to produce. And then they would publish it as well. We have curriculum resources, and I should say and point out to you, if you have the slides, which I hope you do, you can just click on this. All of our curriculum resources are in both English and Spanish. And then we have our podcasting youth media challenge, which is basically like everything else. So any podcast on any topic that students want to do, they're welcome to create it and publish on our showcase. Let me show you the showcase. The showcase is open to all youth voices. So this is not a contest. This is not a gate. There's no barrier to entry. Students are welcome to submit, and we do not decide who gets to submit and who doesn't. So you can see there are lots of different submissions, different things coming in every day. You can see one on school food, which I feel like we get that topic very frequently. And we highlight some here in the carousel. We highlight some on our digital channels. It's really great to see all the different states that are represented on the showcase. So you can see what youth are thinking in Missouri and Ohio and Arizona and Kentucky and Vermont and all sorts of places. So that's also a really great opportunity for young people to just kind of see like, hey, what are people thinking about in other states, and how are we similar and how are we different? So this is a great opportunity for them. And again, all it takes is for you as the leader to sign up on the site, create an account. You'll get a code, that you then give your students to then use to sign on. So they don't create accounts, they just use a code, and your code can be like after school program at this site, or however you want to describe your program. So the challenges are open to everyone, and they're rolling submissions. So the deadline gets to be your choice. Just before the end of the school year is basically the only deadline. And the modifier file, the curriculum is both in Spanish and English, and also is modifiable. So they're Google Docs, so you can just make your own copy and then change it however works for you, because of course you know your youth a lot better than we do. So we kind of get you going, and then you can modify the curriculum to just basically do whatever you need it to do. And then again, this is not a contest. This is a showcase. This is a challenge, because it's challenging to put your voice out there, but it's not a contest. So all young people's voices are welcome on the showcase. They are published as they're submitted. So we review them all, but we actually do that after they post, not before. So, and then if we want to elevate them to broadcast on KQED for you NorCal folks, or other public media stations that we have partnerships with, we'll let you know. It won't be a surprise. You won't turn on the radio and hear your youth voice on the radio. So that's another level of permissions that then we'll go through after that stage happens. So that's kind of what the challenges are. Again, they're open to grades 6 through 12, but it's great to get upper elementary school kids already kind of thinking that way, and practicing these skills. So when they get to that age, they can jump in. There's also lots of ways. We don't want the showcase to be the last stop for youth voices. These are some ideas for all the various ways, and folks have already thought about that in terms of Jade's piece, that you can share your students' voices then more broadly, right? So you can share it with the school site council, the PTA, the school board, the superintendent, the principal, right? You can share it with a community or neighborhood organization that you might be connected with. You can share it with your city planning commission or your city council, right? Depending on where you are. The mayor's office, advocacy organizations in your community. So once students post to the showcase, or even before they do, once they create a digital media piece, then you have a link, right? And then you can share it sort of broadly and more widely. So we really encourage the showcase to be one stop, but not the last stop. And if your youth are too young to even post at the showcase, there are lots of ideas for how you can get their voices out there. So that's just something else to think about. And again, I really appreciate room host posting the slides in the chat. Definitely connect with the slides just so you have these resources for later. And it's view only right now, but you can make your own copy and then you can edit these slides as you will. So we have, we're doing so great on time. I'm going to stop now and ask if there are any questions about anything that you've heard, or any comments folks want to make, anything that you want to see that are on the slides that maybe you think everyone should see, because we're going to get to creating in a second.
I was late to the party, Rachel, but I'm also supporting you as the room host. I'm Julie, and I love this idea, and I'm a little challenged by the fact that there's no visual. So I appreciated your data points around why audio is powerful alone without the impact of the visual, because I consider myself to be a pretty visual learner. So.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm so glad you shared that, Julie. And again, on the showcase, we're focusing on audio today, but we have other youth media challenges that are video. So if you want to check out the video options, we have lots of supports for video. We have these challenges. Some of them for the call for change, for example, is both audio and video. And there's lots of different and really exciting student pieces in both mediums. So there's something for everyone. I just want to show you the curriculum page and kind of how this looks. So, we always start exactly how we did just in this workshop, with analyzing examples and having kids take a look at what it is they're going to be making and what other youth have done in the past and what might, inspire them. So this is just an example of, analysis doc that you can then go and make your own copy. And then once you make your copy, then this becomes yours, and you can, change it however you want, print it out, do whatever you want with it. And then the Spanish is the same. It's just right below. And again, totally editable. You can do whatever you want with that. So, if you're interested, and all the curriculum, of course, can be used with any grade level. It's pretty modifiable. So other questions or comments before we continue?
I'm sorry, I had to step out for a minute. To get access to the curriculum, do you have to create a teacher account? Or
You
how did
don't, yeah, you can access the curriculum here. Let me show you again. You can access this curriculum without, the only moment that you create a teacher account on the showcase is when your students are ready to submit, if they're going to submit. So you'll get this code. This is my code. It's not your code. I have kids, submit on my code before and don't do that. So you would create an account just for yourself when the students were ready to publish. But before that moment, you can access these pages as much as you want. So let me get the link here for you to the site. And yeah, you can just jump onto the site and get all the curriculum goodies that you want off the site without creating an account. But you do need to create an account to publish, because it's important that students are connected to a school or a program site. And then you can sort by that program site too. So it's nice for your community to be like, hey, check out all the pieces that we did at our school. They do need to connect before publication to a specific, teacher program, something like that. Yeah, it does not have to be a school. Yeah, it has to be some sort of educational setting is the only requirement for publication. Awesome, these are great questions. What else? Anything else? All right. And I was telling someone, I think Lupita, before we started, like, if you want to just go click around and do whatever is useful for you, please feel free to do that. But we are going to get into media creation right now. So this is something that used to take, Jake writes, does the curriculum extend to lower elementary grades? It depends, Jake. I mean, it's modifiable, so you can modify it in any way that makes sense for the younger kids. It really is mostly aimed at sort of upper elementary through high school. That's what it's designed for. But there's no reason why, especially second and first graders, couldn't do some kind of audio storytelling. I'm just not sure if the curriculum that we have would be necessarily the best way, but you could definitely modify it to the point where they could, access something. A lot of the examples that we use are of middle and high school students, right? Because that's who publishes on our sites. So as long as the students, I think, can connect to what other students are saying, I think that the curriculum will support that learning.
Awesome, thank you.
Of course.
And Rachel, couldn't you also have the older youth go to elementary schools and share their projects as part of the
kind of virtual platform
connection?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's the beauty of it, right? You can really, there's so many ways to share voice, once it's captured in this way. And so absolutely. And older kids could help younger kids and support that, and the younger kids' voices could be featured, right, in the podcast of older youth, depending on how your program works. So that there's lots of ways to do that. And so I think one of the best ways to really kind of get a sense of how this could work is to do it ourselves, right? To go through the process of making something ourselves, because that'll help us see how we can transfer it to students, and also what problems they might come up with or what challenges they might face. We can go through them first. So to make a radio program, here you see this picture on the left. It used to take a room full of people, a full orchestra, a bunch of sound effects people, a conductor. Like, it used to be a big deal to create a soundscape or what we call now a podcast. And now we can do it by ourselves with our computers and our headphones. And that's really all that we need. And so we are privileged to live in this world where this is accessible to everyone. So there are a lot of podcasts out there. And maybe you have your favorite, drop it in the chat if you want to rip your favorite podcast. But, podcasts are sort of everywhere. And there's we kind of reached peak podcast, right? Like, literally there's probably 5 podcasts about every kind of topic you possibly would want. These are some of the favorites of folks at KQED. But if you have a favorite, go ahead and drop it in. We know that podcasts really draw in the listener with a mixture of music and sound and narration and there's so many different elements of a podcast. At the same time, not every podcast has all of those elements, right? So there's a lot of diversity and variety that is acceptable, when making a podcast. There's really no one way to do it right. And so when you're making your podcast today, I encourage you to just lean into whatever style you feel most comfortable with. Digital audio software exists out there. We're going to use one today, but there are lots of different types. All of them do pretty much the same thing. They upload audio files from outside into the tool. You can also record directly into the tool for most of them now, which is great. You can edit your sound files once you get them into the tool. You can add multiple tracks. You can layer music, sound, and voice. You can adjust the volume. You can play around with it, tinker, so everything sounds exactly the way you want it to. And all of these do pretty much the same thing. We're going to use Soundtrap Education today, and I'm going to be really transparent about the reason why. Because KQED, we have no skin in anyone's game. We are not repping any one tool over the other, but I want to be transparent about how we made the decision to use Soundtrap as our demo tool. It is a freemium, so it does have a cost associated with it, but I'll tell you a little bit about that actually later. But you have a period of time where you can have a free account. Audacity is a free program, it's completely free. But the thing about Audacity is that it's downloadable. You need to have a hard drive, and so many of our schools now have Chromebooks. And so Soundtrap is a web-based tool. And so the fact that it works on Chromebooks and Audacity doesn't was really the deal breaker for us. In order to have it be accessible to as many schools as possible, even for like a limited, free, trial, it's important that it works in a web-based interface. It's also a lot user-friendly, but that's not even it. It's basically because it's an online tool. So that's why we're going to use Soundtrap as our demo. If you already know Audacity or another program like GarageBand or anything else, you are welcome to use that in this session. Just do whatever you want in terms of the tool that makes sense to you. But I'll be giving a demo on Soundtrap, and this is the reason. So we're going to make quick podcasts. And the thing about a quick podcast is we want our script to be very short and our time to play around with the tool to be very long. So we're going to write very, very quick scripts with basically just any one of these prompts or any free choice that you want. But it really should be like 5 sentences max. Like we want the scripts to be short. So these are just some to get you going. What's your hope for the rest of the school year? Pick an issue that you want and just boom, say why you want something to change. 3 things about you, right? Introduce yourself, just like what your passions are, what you want to do. Tell a funny story about something that happened at school, but again, you got to keep it short, or anything that you want. So we're gonna make a quick podcast. I'm going to give you some examples of what a quick podcast could sound like. I've made a model. Whenever you do media making with youth, you should make a model first that you'll then share with them. So I've made a model to share with you. I have one that's very low stakes, which is what I had for breakfast. If you want to just do that because like your mind has gone blank, feel free to do that. This is what this sounds like.
Every day for breakfast, I have something called overnight oats, which is you take like really hard grainy oatmeal and soak it in almond milk for like 24 hours, add some cranberries and almonds and apples and blueberries, and then you get this like cold but somewhat crunchy, sweet mush of high energy oatmeal. 10 out of 10, highly recommend.
So that's my example of a quick podcast. That's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about anything difficult. There's also this really funny podcast about the time I irredeemably destroyed the copy machine at a school site the day before the first day of school, which is just one of those times. If you have the slides, you're welcome to listen to it afterwards. I also have an example. We have 2 examples here. My colleague, Angel, who's not with me today, but she made an example of a community action local issue podcast, and I made one about a national issue that I feel strongly about. So I'm going to play very quickly the national issue one just because it's shorter, but just to give you another sense. And you can see I'm intentionally showing you my Soundtrap Studio, so you can see the way that the sounds are layered, and you're about to learn how to do that.
I think Congress should pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act and protect voting rights for all Americans. This act would reinstate pre-clearance. This means that states with a history of voter discrimination would need federal approval before making changes to their election laws. It would prevent states from enacting laws that many have already passed to make voting harder for voters of color, young voters, and disabled voters. If we don't have voting rights, all of our other rights are at risk. That's why we need legislation to protect voting rights for all Americans.
So you can see that was super short. That was 30 seconds, right? So it's definitely, we're talking short script, a long time to be in the tool. And you can see how in both of those pieces, sounds and music were layered into the tool. So now we're going to set a timer for 5 minutes, just 5 minutes. Really just 5 minutes. Just get something on paper or on a doc and write a script. Here's a sentence frame script if you need a sentence frame. Again, some people are like, my mind is blank, I can't write. So just use the sentence frame, right? Or if you want to write your hope or an issue, feel free to do that. 5 minutes is both a long time and not that long a time. So I'm going to set the timer. And so everyone right now is just writing something down. Grab a piece of paper, open a doc, just write your very short script. And this is only so that you have something to record in 5 minutes when we're going to start recording it. As someone pointed out earlier, it doesn't matter your spelling, your punctuation, who cares? You're going to be speaking the script. So just get something on paper and we'll get back together in 4 minutes and 36 seconds.
Rachel, I'm seeing lifted in the chat. Do you have to have an educational email address on Soundtrap?
You do not. You can use any email address.
Awesome, thank you.
You just have to make sure you are in the EDU section and not the main section.
I see what you're talking about, Marissa. And I don't have a school either, but I just entered my organization name and it let me. So you can bypass it that way, Marissa, if that helps. Does that make sense? I
Yeah.
just use my Gmail because
You're
I'm
right.
actually a
I just
unique
don't want to be
scenario.
in violation of their terms or something and then have it boomerang back down the road. You know?
Nope. As long as you have an account and you said, I'm an educator, this is my, because, you know, there's lots of different ways to be an educator as you are now showing. So they're not that strict about that.
Okay, as long as
Yeah.
they're not policing it on that level.
Nope, not at all.
Right.
That's a great question though. Thank you.
Welcome,
All right.
Brazil. People are just finishing up an activity with Rachel, so I will drop in the slides so you can reference them later. Sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, no
Thank
problem. We're at slide 30, so we're glad you're here. So if folks have written their very short script, you know, basically anything you've written, you're exactly where you need to be, because we want something to actually record into the tool once we get going with our media workshop. So let's get going. People have already done this. So if you have a Soundtrap account or if you use another editing tool, you are more than welcome to use whatever tool you want. I'm going to demo Soundtrap, so it makes sense for folks who are starting from scratch or who might want to explore this tool to do that. It's, as we discussed really quickly, it's really important to go to the education site. And they don't police the emails. You don't have to have a school email. That's totally fine, but you need to be on that side of their product. And if anyone asks, and this is the reason, because no one's going to ask you for a credit card on that side. You're just going to create a free account. And if you don't want to use it after 30 days, it will expire and nothing will happen. If you do want to use it beyond that time, I'm going to tell you at the end how you can convert it to an account that will last till the end of the school year and that you can also bring students to. But that's for later on. For right now, you're just getting in so you can play and have fun making media. So I'm going to do a demo, and my demo is going to talk about these basically 5 things. How to record your voice into the tool itself, which we'll all do in a sec. How to edit your narration if you need to. How to add sound or musical tracks. How to adjust the sound and kind of like play around with that. And then how to share. Because we always like to have a share moment at the end where we celebrate our learning. So I am going to just do that really quickly. All right. So can you see Soundtrap on my screen? Please just give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. So when you are in Soundtrap, you will open it'll be this space that you'll see, something very similar to this. Their fancy way of starting a new project just says enter studio. So you will enter the studio and it will basically be a blank slate. We're going to make a podcast, so we're going to click that one. And then the first thing that we're going to start doing is start adding in tracks. The first thing that you add, always professionals on down, is your voice track, your narration track. So you have a very short script. So you probably won't need to do a lot of editing, but we're still going to show you how to do that. So to add a new track, you just go to add new track. You can also go to add new track over here. There's lots of places. So you're going to add new track and you're going to add a voice track. And then their recording function is going to pop up. You want the reverb to be set all the way down, which it is automatically, and all of these things to just be saved the way they are. Kids will, you know, maybe change their voice, how it sounds, have fun playing around with that. This is the place they would do that. But for today, just record your normal voice. The reverb, if you turn it up, it makes it sound like you're recording from the bottom of a well. Don't recommend that. So you just start recording. So I'm going to start recording. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here with you. I am loving this workshop and I hope you are too. So that's it. And then press stop. There's a very subtle X to the left here that gets you out of this recording tool. And so now I have what I just recorded for all of you. The playhead right here, you can see me moving it back and forth. It's like a cursor. It's exactly
Rachel, I
the
was
same
looking
thing.
for the easy button. I'm like, wait, where's the hard part? So far, so good.
Oh, good. Yay. So you can move this like a cursor back and forth. And that's what you'll use if you want to cut something. So, and so there's lots of different things that I might want to cut. But at the end, I kind of had that kind of awkward part where I was like, so that's it. Right. That's not awkward. So I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to put my playhead right where I want to cut. And I'm going to go make sure it's selected. And I can go here to edit. But what I really want to do is go up to edit and split the region. Now that's new vocabulary, right? That harkens back to the days where, you know, tape was like physically cut with scissors kind of. So that's what we mean by cut in Soundtrap. But my playhead went away. So I'm going to put back in my place and do edit split region. And you see that that region I want to cut now separates from my track, and I can just hit delete and it's gone. And so now I have the track I want. Today, you probably won't be editing your narration that much because, right, it's so short. But that's something that you can do when you need to, and you might need to edit your musical track. So Denise, this happens sometimes to people. I just would really encourage you to close your browser that you're using, or maybe open it in a different browser and kind of try again. What you're experiencing, Denise, is very typical. I'm glad it's only happened actually to one person. And I'm sorry it's happened to you. So to add a musical track kind of underneath our narration, which we might want to do for today, you go to this button here. Soundtrap is owned by Spotify. So to say that they have a lot of music loops is an understatement. You have access to a lot of different musical loops. There's lots of different ways that you can search by sort of musical styling, by instrument, anything that you make yourself. If kids want to do that, that's actually a whole other thing, but after school could be a fun place for that to happen, right? So I encourage you to just kind of like listen to a bunch of different options and then just not spend maybe too much time on this, but it could be a rabbit hole. So Fire Rain Song Starter. Ooh, that sounds interesting. All right, great. That's great. So I'm going to double click on that and it's going to automatically generate into my studio. So you see my musical clip is a lot longer than my script. It might not be that yours is. So to cut it, right, I would just put my playhead, go select this track, go to edit, split region, and get rid of it. Awesome. And if I wanted it back because I made a mistake on Soundtrap, there is, in fact, a undo button that saves you every time. So that's also something you can do. So that is something. And if I wanted to move this around the track, so I didn't want it to start until halfway through my narration, I could move it. I could add another track and layer another layer of sound underneath. So there's lots of things that you can do once you layer. And so, great. Question, Julie.
Yes, first of all, I want to make sure Denise got in. That was, I was messaging with her privately to make sure she got in, Denise. And then secondly, you know how like movies or commercials, they have like the music before the speech. So can you flip the opposite? So can you move the audio track past the video, the sound? And
Absolutely.
then okay, cool. So you can kind of have your own intro, outro vibes and seem more legit. Okay.
Bring the vibes.
I'm trying to create my own show apparently in my own mind. But I also wanted to say the one other thing is I was helping, trying to help Denise in the chat as well. And when I didn't see where you added, what was the button that you added the music track?
Oh yeah, it's just those little musical notes up here on the right. And that'll pop open the whole library. This little musical notes. Purple, round.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was the 5 gray buttons at the middle. Nope. Okay, so it's up on the right.
Yeah, it's up on the right. Also, there's lots of different ways to do lots of different things in Soundtrap. So there might be lots of ways, but this is like an easy way to do it. So so thinking and staying with Julie's kind of vibe that she's creating. So say we wanted to start this music and we wanted actually it to fade in. So not only start before our narration, but fade in dramatically. There are these cute little buttons here. They're little round buttons, and you just pull them across, and that's the fade in. And you can also do it on the other side, pull them across, and that's the fade out. If you want to expand your musical track because you just love it so much, you can just drag it out, and it'll just drag out. And then you can cut it the way that I've talked about. You can also change the volume of each track. So if my voice was too quiet, I could increase the volume of my voice if I wanted to by just moving these toggles. I could lower the volume of the music, which often you have to do so your voice can be heard. And I'm intentionally like being very quick and very like cursory because I really want to give you all a chance to explore and jump in. This will also give us a chance to work more intensely with Denise if she's still struggling. So right now, what I want folks to do is here's the checklist that we're going to do. You're going to hit record. If you have the slides, which I hope you do, and you forget how I showed you that, you can just put them in present mode and hit help, and it will go to a help slide that walks you through it. Go back to the checklist, right? So like we have some supports, so you don't have to interrupt. You can just kind of, or you can just play around, do whatever works best for you. So this is great. I'm going to set a timer, but it's not going to be on the screen. Since we go to 11:30, we're going to have 20 minutes to play around. And as part of your, I hope that if you do finish something that you are willing to share it in our share doc. To do that, you just exit the studio, get a shareable link once you exit your studio and save it. And then drop that link into our share doc. But closer to the 20 minutes, I'll review how you do that. All right, so I'm gonna go on mute, and I'm gonna highly suggest that everyone else mute. And so you
And
can-
Rachel, Marissa
Yes?
has a quick question before we drop off. So I
Oh,
want to make
yeah,
sure
no
Marissa gets her
problem.
question in.
Hi, Marissa, I'm just, yeah, go
My
ahead.
question is about the sound. When we record, how do we all not talk over each other? Are we going
So
in?
if you,
You have to be muted.
yeah, if you mute on Zoom, you should also be able to then record but if you don't, what I'll do is I'll open a bunch of breakout rooms. Can I do that? Or maybe Julie has to do that.
I can do that too. But you should be fine, Marissa. You can turn off your video and turn off your sound, and we won't hear you. Don't worry.
Yeah, we do this all the time, so it should work. But for some people, especially if you have an older machine, if you need to go into a breakout room because the sound isn't coming up on Soundtrap, let us know and we'll just stick you into your own personal breakout room.
And if you just joined us, we're about to do an activity, so I'll put the slide link in and you can see where we're at.
Yeah, and Julie, we're not going to talk at all once I set the timer, because you actually will be in people's recordings if we do that. All right, so the timer's ticking and we'll come back at 11:20. All right, I'm so sorry if I'm cutting into someone's narration. But that is time. Wherever you are is exactly where you are supposed to be. And I'm going to close the breakout rooms and get folks back into where they need to be. And they'll be coming in about 30 seconds. If you are interested in sharing in our share doc, you can see Marissa and Brissa, I hope I'm saying that right, are in there right now. Yay. If you're in the share doc, stay in the share doc and definitely click those links. And if you're willing to have us and appreciate you and share what you've created during this time with the full caveat that, of course, you know, if people are learning, this is a new thing, but sharing sometimes is also a great way to put ourselves in our students' shoes and have them remember what it's like to share something for the first time. So folks are coming back in and they'll be back soon. And when that happens,
I
yes.
still don't quite see the share doc part. I have the file, but I don't get how to
So you're in
share the whole
you're in it.
library.
Yeah, so just copy and paste the link just in that little box. You're totally in the right place.
I think she means from Soundtrap though, Rachel.
Oh, okay. Let me show you again. And this is great as people are coming back. So you're exiting your studio. And Marissa, you said you were in this space. So that's exactly the space you should be in. And so you're going to go over to this 3-dot menu here.
Yes.
And you're going to click it. And you're going to click Get Shareable Copy Link.
That's not in my options.
Oh, what is is download in your options? Over here on this little, if it's still mixing, you might not have anything come up yet. But that should be where it is.
Is it that you have to
Great.
save it or something?
You do have to save it. You have to get out into this space, not the studio space. But yeah, and this is fun. This is exactly what we do. And the thing is about this in terms of students is that for students, you'll probably have them download an actual file, like an MP3 file. And so that would be something they do, or share a file with you. But for us here, just amongst us, we can get a shareable copy if that's an option for your studio. And if it is, great. And if it's not.
Your list is totally different than mine. I don't have.
Okay.
I get create assignment and then go straight to share copy. But then it's
okay.
Create a copy of libraries when you click on that.
Yeah, libraries is the name of your podcast. So yeah, you can create a copy of libraries.
Okay, let's see if that'll work then.
Yeah, and I don't want to run out of time, and I know that you guys have a tight schedule today. So if you can drop a link once you figure out how to share it to yours in. Oh, here we go. Let me just see, Marissa, if this works. If this is, and then this will help everyone if this is something that works. Okay, I think that the link got a little bit messed up. Let me take off this link. Here we go. Okay. So this is a good sign though. So at least we're okay. And then Brisa has hers. Let's see if that one works. Okay. So it's possible that, and this sometimes happens and it's totally fine. If you're have a firewall situation at your district, or if you have a district email and it limits the number of people you can share to, that might be happening right now. But I appreciate folks giving it a try and definitely finishing something. It's great. But I want to make sure that we have time to reflect a little bit. And then also to, if you want to continue to use Soundtrap, we have a partnership with them so you can get it for free for the rest of the year for you and your students. And I want to make sure if you want to take that opportunity, you can. You don't have to. Again, it's all free. So it's nothing, you'll never be charged for it. But I would love to hear if folks want to type in the chat just in the last few minutes, the answers to any one of these reflection questions. So how did the process go? What is something that you learned that you might want to take back to your program? Or what is something that you want to learn more about? And I think everyone might be in the situation right now of being like, oh, there's so much more I need to learn. And so that's a given, right? But how was the process itself for you, or what kinds of things do you think that would be useful for students? Go ahead and share that out loud or drop them in the chat. Or what do you want to learn more about after participating? Yeah, Marissa, go ahead.
I've been intimidated by podcasts because it always seems like it'd be long. And weirdly, snippet vibe or short, right, is much, it feels more accessible now. Like, it was like, wow, if kids are even 10 minutes, 15 minutes, there's like, even if I did them in pairs, that's like 10 kid pairs and 20 hours by the time they all finish a program. So the idea that you could do like 30 seconds or 1 minute, and they get the skills and experience the whole process on a very short piece is very powerful, I think.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah, definitely. They don't have to be This American Life. I mean, in fact, probably they shouldn't be, especially as they're starting out. Good. So Noah was saying it's fun and super easy. Alana, I had no idea that Soundtrap existed. So diving even more. And yeah, definitely. Like everyone is at that stage of the learning process where you might be like, I don't know. But this is a chance to keep going. Julie?
So I noticed it says 30-day free trial. So you do have to pay for it, right? Or
Nope. Okay, so let's perfect. So KQED and Soundtrap have gotten together, and if you use this code, so stay logged in, don't log out. So you have an account now. Stay logged in, and if you use this subscription, if you go to this website, it looks like this, and just type KQED into this, your account for 30 days will convert to an account that lasts through June 30th. So you'll be able to have it for the whole rest of the year. After June 30th,
Okay.
They'll say to you, do you want to pay for this? And you'll say, no, and that's fine. Like you haven't given them any payment information. So, and if your district has it, you might, be like, hey, do you have this? But if you don't, and then next year, hopefully we'll have this code again and you can use a different email address and claim it again. So we are not necessarily about you paying Soundtrap, but we are definitely about you having access for you. And so once you claim the subscription, you will have access for yourself, but you'll also be able to invite up to 500 students into the tool as well for free. So you can create groups of students that will then be able to access the account. Did you have another question, Julie? I know we have to leave, so I just want to make sure before we end that people have this.
no,
Right, and
thank you so much.
Yeah, and so this is just more information about submitting to the Youth Media Challenges if youth want to do that. This is my email, so please reach out. You have the slides. Please reach out if you have any questions. A lot of times people log out of their Soundtrap account and then go to claim the code and they can't. But you have to be logged into your educator account before you can claim the code. So just know that. But if you forget, just email me and I'll let you know how to do it. So as always with any new tech tool, if you're wanting to know how to do something, all you need to do is Google, how do I do blank in Soundtrap? And the education community will flood you with videos and blog posts and everything that you need to learn a new tool. So, and Soundtrap itself has lots and lots of resources on there if you're interested in that. So, oh, Denise, great. And in the end, there's a happy ending. Denise is on and she has a subscription. So this is a wonderful way to end. It was wonderful to spend this time with you. Thank you so much. And again, my invitation to reach out via email is genuine. So please be in touch.
Rachel,
and-
you're amazing. I wish you could
Yeah.
talk to all our programs. This is so
Bring on.
awesome. So let's do this, Rachel. Let's go statewide.
All right, let's do it. Have a wonderful rest of your symposium, though. This is so exciting. Have some great learning and have a wonderful time with your youth this afternoon. See you, everyone.
So much. This is awesome. Thank you.
Yay, take care.
Thank you, everyone. We hope to
Thank
see you for
you.
the next session workshops.